You're listening to Cosmic Cousins Soul-Centered Astrology. For grounding your ass from all the new age sass. I am your host, Jeff Henshaw. Season 3 of Cosmic Cousins is dedicated to honoring the interconnectedness of our universal family. Through embodied health, self-discovery, and deeper learning. Hey Cosmic Cousins, welcome back to another week of the show. Eclipse season is upon us, so we have an exciting episode today. We're going to be diving into understanding the archetype of Cancer. We will be talking about this new moon Cancer solar eclipse and how to utilize its energy. And then we're honoring the life of and the birth chart of the incredible Pakistani activist Malala Yousafzai, who is giving us some high vibe Cancer energy with a Libra moon and a Leo rising. So we're going to break down that triple tier. We're going to look at her birth chart. And then to end this episode off, we'll be chatting it up with the incredibly perceptive Cancer Sun-Scorpio Moon, Micheal Hooker, who is an arts-based psychology writer, performance artist, singer, and literary wine salon owner, bilocated in Brooklyn, New York, and Tampa, Florida. And so, yeah, before we get into all of that, I thought it would be really cool for us to start this episode by feeling into these watery Cancer vibes by flowing into some music and some song by listening to one of Michael's songs. And so I wanted to share with you some lyrics from this song that I thought were very Cancer. And so the lyrics of this song are, "A shot in the dark, shelter grows near. My ninth house can't seem to keep quiet." And so I actually didn't talk to Michael about this, but ninth house in Michael's chart is Capricorn. And so Capricorn, we know, is the polar energy to Cancer. And Cancer is matriarchy, Capricorn's patriarchy. And then in this song, so I'm going to keep going. So dress like a witch today, cast spells that drive you away. I wear my tall black boots, this jacket's evil eye proof. There's something with this connection to this like witchy energy. And actually the wind just blew the door shut. I don't know if you heard it in the background. But this polarization to father energy. So then it goes, the ethics of our fathers. Rejoice when others prosper. I feel the refuge of daybreak, mischief of things created. And so there is this energy of this like very intuitive, flowing, moon-like energy of Cancer that I feel in this song. It feels connected to our ancestors, to the past, this energy of the witch and its polarization to this father energy. So I thought it was really giving us a great look into Cancer Sun, and we're also feeling a bit of Michael's Scorpio Moon too. So yeah, let's start this week's episode by listening to that song, Evil Eye by Micheal Hooker. I love this song, and I love how Dressed Like a Witch Today, there's this sense of using the clothes as a form of protection, evil eye, which is really giving us that Cancer energy of the shell. And so, yeah, we're going to get a chance to sit down and chat with Micheal about her life and work at the end of this episode. And we cover topics such as a Cancer-Virgo relationship, how books are a namestay of home for Cancer, poetry and Cancer's connection to honeybees. We talk about recreating the womb experience through performance art. We get into some Carl Jungian psychology. We talk about public art and social practice. We even get into honoring history, which is very Cancer. So the history of Tampa through a literary lector social club that Micheal founded. And we also talk about death, ancestral karma, and Cancer's nostalgia manifesting as grief. And so all that, it's super rich and juicy, and that will come at the end of the episode. But for now, let's transition to deepen our understanding of Cancer and this Cancer solar eclipse that is upon us, which is tomorrow on Thursday. And so you can start by bringing your awareness to the rib cage as we transition into that now. Okay, so let's take a deep, nourishing inhale together into the rib cage. And exhale, let out any frustration that you might have, any sort of emotions that aren't supporting you in this moment. And then you can bring the awareness to the third eye point as well, the pineal gland, which connects us to the moon. Because this week, the moon finds itself in Cancer, and sun is in Cancer. So we're breathing into the third eye, we're breathing into the rib cage. And this is also a particular thing to notice of what's going on around you is that there's lots of retrogrades happening. Mars is in retrograde. Mercury is in its shadow of retrograde. And Mercury goes retrograde in 2 weeks, which will be the end of season 3. And I literally just recorded like an entire 30-minute talk on Cancer, and it all got erased. GarageBand that I record this on closed down. And so this is exactly why I don't produce the podcast during retrograde season. So, but we're in the shadow, so I'm starting to feel it. My internet went out today. So all of these things that are creating resistance, and it's interesting to be happening during Cancer season and then into Leo season, and also during eclipse season. It's a lot of energy. So I'm gonna do my best to channel what I just was talking about with Cancer, and so yeah, let's get into it. It's interesting. This Cancer season, we've had the opportunity to go into understanding the archetype through talking to people on the show. But we haven't actually gone into understanding the archetype of Cancer yet, because each of the episodes was dedicated to like a different topic. Normally I would start the Cancer season off, or like another season, just going into the sign, talking about it. But the first week we dedicated to depression and astrology, which was very appropriate considering what was happening in the current media with Anthony Bourdain, and Anthony Bourdain being a Cancer. So we looked at depression and astrology. The next week we looked at the Capricorn full moon and the polarity of Capricorn Cancer energy. And then last week, because it was Independence Day, we explored the topics of nationalism and patriotism and looked at the United States birth chart as a Cancer. And so all of these topics are linked to understanding Cancer energy. But I thought, this week it would make sense for us to dive in and explore Cancer without having like another topic. And it's appropriate because it's the Cancer new moon. And so, which is tomorrow on Thursday, July 12th. And so that will be the Cancer solar eclipse. And so some of this may feel like a review for you since we've already been in this Cancer season energy for some time, but who doesn't love a little review, So with Cancer, it feels like we've been in summer for some time, and I'm burning my ass off right now. I don't have my AC on because I'm recording, and I've just recorded like 30 minutes of this. And so at this point, I'm just like really hot. Yeah, we're in summer. We forget Cancer season marks the beginning of summer, but it feels like to me we've been in summer for some time, but Cancer season starts right at the summer solstice, right? And so it's symbolized by the crab. We talked about it as the pearl, which is my favorite symbol of Cancer, to take irritants and to transform it into something beautiful. And so I gotta say, I have been really feeling these Cancer vibes over the past few weeks. And so I'll give some examples of the way this is manifested for me. But for one, I started off my Cancer season in Virginia, back at my parents' home, which for some reason I mysteriously find myself back home during Cancer season. It's not like I plan it. It's just like oftentimes life will take me in that direction. And so while I was back in Virginia, I actually went to the first shop that I ever bought a tarot deck at. Back when I was like 15 years old, I went in there for nostalgia's sake. I also went into this stationery shop that I love, and I bought a bunch of cute stationery, and I've been writing letters to friends like from my past in like a very poetic and imaginative way. Not in a way that's like, oh, this is what I did this week. It's more like, oh, like when I saw this picture of this girl in the ocean running under the moon, it made me think of you and your spirit. Like it's like much more poetic and imaginative. I'm finding this Cancer energy. And so friends have been like showing me like old home videos. I've looked at like childhood pictures of friends. I've felt like crying a lot more than normal, but not actually crying. There's like kind of like a hardening around the emotion, but really feeling deeply. I shed some tears with a Cancer friend over a tarot reading a few days ago, which felt really, really nice. I've also felt like with my friends, I've been feeling a bit more cuddly and just wanting to hold my friends instead of like communicating. All this feels like Cancer to me. I've also been enjoying drinking a bit more than I normally do over this Cancer season. And so water and the connection to alcohol can also be a thing. I witnessed moodiness in a cafe yesterday. So I was like sitting outdoors, and this guy asked the woman next to me if this particular door was another entrance to the cafe, and she was literally like, and like kind of like rolled her eyes and was like really annoyed that he interrupted her novel to ask this dumb question. And then she ended up like slamming the book after he walked away, and she left the cafe. She was like not having it. I was like, yeah, you just need to be at home right now. But yeah, that felt very Cancer to me. Not saying that that's how Cancers act, but like this is just feels like that energy of Cancer. And so, yeah, you can think this is the time of year, right? It's early summer. So it may be a time where we get quite nostalgic. It's a time when I think people are likely to stay close to home. I know in LA, it's been so freaking hot that like it was like 109 degrees this weekend. And I've just like been inside my room with the AC blasting, and because the rest of my apartment doesn't have AC, just my bedroom. And so I've been kind of like closed off in my room. And so, yeah, the Cancer season, it's a time to stay close to home. It's a time to revisit places from our past. I think of family reunions occurring this time of year for me traditionally. I think of like summer at my grandma and grandpa's house, which by the way, they're both Cancers, and they're also a part of like the Cancer Pluto generation. And so, yeah, Cancer season, it makes me think of trips to the ocean, with Cancer being associated with a crab, that feels really appropriate. Neighborhood barbecues, vacations, a lot of time reading novels, long walks on the beach, feeling dreamy and romantic, like summer lovin' from Greece gives me those like nostalgic, romantic summertime vibes. I think of like reminiscing on the last school year by like flipping through the yearbook. Yeah, it's a time of year where we're really not thinking about time as much. And maybe it's the shift of like kids being out of school. But for me, I'm definitely not focused on my work as much this time of year. I'm not focused on time. I'm like, if you've sent me an email, I'm really sorry. I'm going to get back to you as soon as I can. But maybe like I just need to be more in this flowing state right now. Like I've had a lot more client cancelizations than I normally have. Like yesterday I had a client cancel in the afternoon. And I was like, I could have really used that extra time to like catch up on emails, but instead I was like, you know what? I'm just going to take the rest of the day off. And I ended up going on a long walk around the Silver Lake Reservoir with a friend. And then we made our way to like a friend's house for dinner where wine was involved and like just like lots of like heartfelt conversation. And so all of this kind of like flowing energy, it's a time of being watery. It's a time of being moody. Cancer is a unique sign because it's the one astrological sign that its ruling planet is not a planet. It's the actual moon, which shows that Cancer is greatly influenced by the changing of the tides, which can lend us into that stereotype of Cancer being moody, right? So what this means is, not only is Cancer ruled by the moon, but we're all ruled by the moon during this time of year, which is June 21st to July 22nd. And so what this means is that during this 30-day period, we experience the entire astrological journey of expansion because the moon is moving through each of the 12 signs. And so every 2.5 days, there's a shift for us. And so this is the only time of year we experience this. And it's the only time, it's the only sun sign that's ruled by the moon. And so, yeah, during this time of year, Cancer season, we feel greatly sensitive to these shifts. And so there's vast potential for spiritual evolution this time of year. And I've seen that in my life, and especially this year because it's coupled with the eclipse season. So, right, the moon, it's changing every 2.5 days. And so we are ruled by a different astrological sign. And we go through all 12 during this Cancer season. So Cancer season houses this energy, and those shifts to me, if we're really like following the trajectory of the moon's pathways during this time, it indicates a time of a hero's journey. And so this can be internal or external, but I think for me, externally in a way that this is manifested, and I'm not sure how, it's kind of mysterious to me, but I've partaken in 2 epic cross-country road trips in my lifetime, and both of those road trips were during Cancer season. And so, yeah, that would be externally like a hero's journey, but we're also traversing our inner landscapes this time of year. We're experiencing a wide range of emotions, moving through obstacles, breaking through karmic patterns, And so the major arcana card in the tarot to represent Cancer is the Chariot, which could very much be like a road trip kind of energy. But really the Chariot is preparing to go into the underworld, which we can say is the subconscious, which is going into the past, which is going into karma, which is going into ancestor energy, right? The Chariot is preparing to go into the underworld and can rise above challenges through a connection to intuition. And so Cancers are very intuitive. The Chariot has 2 crescent moon shoulder pads and is sitting in front of a body of water, typically, iconographically speaking, in the tarot, and then has a star crown, which is showing that it's connected cosmically as well. And so, and the Chariot is also has this like calm and cool demeanor to it. And so, yeah, we can think of the Chariot as also like Cancer's crab shell. But the Chariot is preparing to leave home, which is another way Cancer evolves, is to leave the comfortable safe haven of the Chariot, to expand the horizons of its world, to expand its concept of home by going into the underworld. And so the court card that you can use to represent Cancer is the Knight of Cups. So it's initiating energy, Knight, through compassion. Cups are initiating energy, cardinal, through emotional growth, water, deeper self-inquiry. And so, yeah, because of the intuitive moon energy and because of all the internal shifts, maybe external shifts, and this like coming of age heroicism that's taking place during this time of year for all of us, it's a time of growth on an emotional level. And so this is getting us into understanding Cancer. To be a baby who incarnated during this time of year, this is the first thing that you encountered on this earth plane is people going through some massive internal shifts, working out family karma, working out the past. And so Cancer rules over the rib cage, right? Which is a place where we can store a lot of grief, but it's also a place where it's protecting the heart, right? So like the oyster protecting a sacred pearl, we were saying. And so it's a time of year where around us, there could be a lot of like people protecting themselves so that they can go through these internal shifts, so they can have their chariot, so that they can go into the underworld. And so, right, we were saying, right, it's a romantic time of year, summer loving, the moon over water, long walks on the beach, nostalgia, but also the underworld. intuition, ancestors, karma. And so to be born under the influence of this time of year, a Cancer baby may really feel an unwavering impulse to the past, to experience the world from a place of emotion, with an emphasis on the safety of home and family and tradition. And so you can think of giving birth to a child during this time of year, right? Parents normally get extra time off during the school year. Maybe not for everyone, but like if you were a teacher, for instance, and you had a kid, you'd have extra time off. And so there's spending more one-on-one time with a child. This is actually the case. My friend who is a Cancer, and her husband is a Cancer as well, they had a Cancer baby last year, and I was like, wow, this baby is getting a lot of visitors. For instance, you know, like more than like a baby that was born during Capricorn season, which would be like right after the holiday season, and everyone's like kind of like tapped out. And so we're more inclined this time of year to be feeling emotional. So Cancer babies could be getting a lot more nurturing than other babies. Perhaps this child is even whisked off in the first few months of his life to go visit relatives or go on vacation, or to have more visitors come within the first few weeks of his life because people are off from school, or they're on vacation, or they're really under the influence of the emotional moon and feeling more nostalgic and likely to be receptive to a child. Because of this influence, Cancer may completely identify with their parents or guardians or home, or may unconsciously replay over and over again the karmic patterns that bind us to family, to ancestors. Just like the moon finds itself in cycles, right? The moon is acting as a portal that connects us to our ancestors. And so this memory is coming to me in this moment, but it was probably during Cancer season because it was definitely summertime, and my parents were dropping me and my brother off at my grandparents' house, who were both Cancers, by the way, which I had already mentioned. And my parents were in their chariot, in their car. I think it was probably a station wagon with like, you know, the wood siding and the old school station wagon chariot. And I didn't know for whatever reasons that my parents were leaving me at my grandparents'. And then I had this sudden moment of realization. I'm like 4 or 5 years old where I'm like, oh my gosh, they're leaving me here. And so I started crying, and they got in the car and they left, and I'm chasing after their chariot down the road, and they turn, and I miss what turn they were going down, and I come to a dead end, and my grandmother is just sort of like walking after me. She's not running after me. She's like very in control. And she, you know, takes me over to this hillside that was at the end of this dead end road, and she pointed up towards the waning moon that was in the sky. So my Cancer grandmother pointing up towards the waning moon, her ruling planet. And then we sat down in the grass, and she taught me how to like tie these like flowers together to make an anklet, which now I'm thinking about ankles is Aquarius. And then she taught me how to use a blade of grass to take my 2 thumbs and to blow on it and make a whistle. This is all very Cancer, and it actually inspired me to write this song, which is about death and about ancestors. And so the lyrics to the song go, waiting at the end of the road, at the top of a hill, for the sun to set and the air to chill. Grandma intuition shows us the way, motions toward the waning moon out during day. People come and go, people come and go, people come and go, but the moon remains. That's the chorus, the people come and go part. But that's a very like, Cancer holds this like grandmother intuition, this very wise energy, the Cancers that I know. And this energy is also available to all of us this time of year. And so, yeah, this sensitivity, this like deep wisdom can make a Cancer really great at the skill of protection, of self-preservation, of nurturance at the core of its being, especially if it is a Cancer that maybe didn't, because not all Cancers are going to have the luxury of a secure home, of a secure upbringing. And in fact, a lot of Cancers I know have this really interesting relationship to their family that has kind of propelled them into the role of Cancer to create homes, since they didn't have that solid foundation. And so, yeah, Cancers are very adept at creating home, and they can make others feel safe through their presence. And so the most extreme example of this, and this would probably be a lower form of Cancer, would be Cancers can have a tendency to be possessive, to be attached to things. It can be people, like codependence, or it can actually be physical things like to hoard. And so it's important for Cancer to sort of allow themselves to let go of that need to like be attached to things. People come and go, right? But the moon remains. That would be the higher octave of the grandmother intuition, that wisdom. And so, yeah, because of Cancer's sensitivity, Cancer can have difficulty distinguishing its own emotions from the emotions of others. And so why not stay in that shell, you know? It's safer in there. Why not stay in that chariot? But this is the way for a Cancer to grow and to evolve and to wake up to their potential as a healer that's ushering in the new paradigm, to step outside of the comfort zone. And so we can think of Cancer as conscious water, to be aware of emotions, to breathe into them. And so I invite you to completely feel your feelings on this Cancer new moon. The phrase, right? I feel. Cancer Sun, I feel conscious reality. Moon, I feel subconscious reality. And when we give ourselves permission to feel into this, when we give ourselves this permission during Cancer season and during the Cancer new moon, we begin to realize that our emotions, right, ebbing and flowing, that it's actually safe for us to leave our home, to leave our comfort zone, and to be the hero going into the underworld. Whether that's in a metaphorical sense, or whether that's quite literally for you. But we get an understanding of our values and where we come from, and we can honor the past, and we can also release the past. We can honor those who came before us, and we can also release our bind to those. And this brings about intergenerational healing, which is soul-centered Cancer. And so I think of Cancer evolving by taking a summer road trip, by taking the homes with you on the wheel. And so that can be a metaphor. But Cancer energy evolves when it learns that home isn't a physical place attached to distant memories or to even family members, but that instead the entire planet is our home. And I just wanted to let those sirens go by. And sometimes it's nice as a reminder to take a gentle pause. I just saw the Mr. Rogers documentary this past week, which he is, to be sure, a Pisces. But he talks about the importance of silence and taking pauses, which I think is important any time of the year, but particularly during water seasons. That feels really resonant to me. And so, yeah, the entire planet is your home. This is something that Cancer is learning. We're all family. And Cancer is the matriarchy. It's the mothering archetype. So there is that deep wisdom around caretaking. And so Cancer's own body is the vessel which carries the heart, just like the chariot carries the charioteer. And so when Cancer develops the ability to first differentiate their own psychic impressions and the influence of others, they'll be more at home wherever they go. And they expand into their polar sign of leadership. And so this literally explodes the Cancer's heart into its full capacity. And so the polar sign is Capricorn. So it allows Cancer to become a boss, really, and to create the space and structures to be and to assume the role of the nurturer, to be doulas of the revolution, as we called it on a previous episode, with a limitless compassion, to really build a home for others, to nurture their capacity to expand into consciousness. So it's some really potent and powerful work in this lifetime as a Cancer sun, moon, or rising, or just for all of us when we're working with this Cancer energy. And so we're feeling into it this week with the Cancer new moon eclipse. And so eclipses are moments in time where great shifts take place, right? Major spiritual upgrades will occur in our lives during the eclipse. And so I have one friend who finally fired his acting manager this week. And then literally like right after he was telling me he fired the manager, he found out that a film he was in like maybe a few years ago got picked up by a big distributor. And so it's like eclipsing the manager out and then eclipsing in an upgrade. So it's swift changes are the eclipse season. Last eclipse season, I was living in Hawaii and my ass got eclipsed out, and then I ended up in LA. Last night, that dinner party I was telling you I was at, my friend literally, like, we were all sitting out on the porch, and then the landlord sent someone to post a statement on the front door that said that the rent had just increased, which can only happen once a year. And of course, it happened during eclipse season, right? And so eclipse around the home, Cancer eclipse, the price of rent going up. And so in my own life, I just got a sudden offer to perhaps move into a new upgraded apartment, actually with a Cancer who's going to be on the Cancer panel next week. So it's a quick turnaround. Things can happen really quick, which would be an August 1st move-in date, which would be around the lunar eclipse of the Aquarius full moon, which is at the end of July. And so over the next few weeks, major upgrades are available. It's like eclipsing things out this week and then eclipsing things in. And so there can be, this can actually be the physical world around us, like actual our rent going up, or it can be more of like a spiritual upgrade. And so particularly in regards to Cancer themes. And so this could be upgrades in your home, right? Cancer rules over the home. It could be flashes or insights from past memories and ancestors. Anything revolving motherhood, your mom. It would also be, perhaps this could be a week of becoming pregnant. So be mindful of that if that's what you're wanting to call in or not wanting to call in. It could also be a time of death of family members, which Anne Ortley was talking about. She said eclipse season could be a time of death. And I was thinking, like, with that added in energy of Cancer, it could be a time of just like family members being released. And also because Mars is in retrograde, and Mars in retrograde could be prone to accidents. So be sure to wear your helmet if you're biking. Be sure to reach out to your loved ones, especially your mother and parents this week. Major upgrades are available to you this week around your healership potential. And so it's a time to release old karmic patterns, right? Particularly in relationship to your family karma. So it could be a time. Also, I think of romance with Cancer, so it's a time of new romance, eclipsing relationships and commitments. Proposals might be a big thing this week. Proposals, wanting to start a family and build a life with someone, build a home with someone. But eclipses can also be a time of breakups too. Eclipses can have a very final row of the major arcana feel. It could be a very tower energy, but it could also be big breakthroughs like the sun card energy, or even like the world energy, like a closing of an epic chapter and breaking out of karmic cycles. And so, yeah, conserving your energy this week. It can be a big energy zapper if you aren't in alignment. Yeah. So with that, let's bring it to the breath. You can breathe into the third eye and you can breathe into the rib cage. And just being super nurturing with your breath and opening yourself up to receiving whatever upgrades are available to you at this time. You can also set intentions of what it is that you'd like to release. And together we'll do the sound of Om as we transition into the next part of the episode. And so the sound of Om together. Deep inhale. And so now it's time for a little updates and announcements. So there's a Patreon account for this show, which there's something special I'm announcing today. So next week is the season finale of season 3. We'll also crown the Queen of Cancer, which I'm super stoked about. But this is a big Mercury retrograde. It's not going to, the whole entirety of Leo season, we're going to be in retrograde, which means season 4 premiere is not until the end of August, which will be the beginning of Virgo season. And so if you value this podcast and you would like to still stay connected during Leo season, I'm going to be releasing secret episodes. They're going to be much shorter. They're only going to be 30 minutes, and I'm just going to be talking about the transits. I'm not going to be looking at birth charts or having people on the show, but I will be updating you on transits. Anyone that's a part of the Patreon for this show will get episodes every week about Leo. And so we'll dive into soul-centered Leo. We'll talk about the transits, full moons, new moons, all that stuff. And so that's available to you if you go to patreon.com/cosmic cousins. And so Patreon is just, you make a monthly commitment. You can do as low as $1 if you want. If everyone who listened to the show donated $1 a month, it would cover my rent, which would be amazing. Just throwing it out there, holding the high vision for that one. But yeah, so special shout out to 3 new Patreon members. We have Isaac Rimbold, Rebecca Paget, and Liz Wolfson are our new Patreon members. And so thank you, Isaac, Rebecca, and Liz for contributing. And so, yeah, it's such an honor again to be here each week and to dedicate my life to studying this practice and sharing it with you. It's bringing so much joy to my life, and I love showing up to this each week. And so, I've just been loving connecting with all of you. And so, one of the ways that I enjoy connecting with you is through mentorship. I do one-on-one mentorships, and I also offer astrology readings. So if you're interested in that, you can find that at astrologycousins.com. I also have a retreat coming up in a few weeks and some workshops. And so you can find all that information also on my Instagram, which is cosmic.cousins on the IG. And so speaking of Instagram, you can vote on the Queen of Cancer. And so we voted it down to the final 4. And so let's start. Mindy Kaling is a triple Cancer, Cancer Sun, Moon, and Mercury. And Mindy really is giving us this energy of Cancer in a lot of really cool ways. And so she's got this balance of like this sweet nature, but she's got a bit of sass and like kind of a tough exterior to her at times too. And she's a Cancer career woman. She was pretty intuitive in regards to her entire career. And her parents were intuitive too, because they named her Mindy off of her. So her parents were born in India, and they named her after a famous sitcom character, which was Mork and Mindy. And so they wanted her to have a cute American name, and so they named her after a popular sitcom character. And then she's gone on to produce her own sitcom and to be the writer, and actor, and director for The Office, which you probably know her from. But she's also written 2 comedy memoirs, and she's had multiple film appearances, and she has her own successful sitcom, which is The Mindy Project. And so, yeah, she's giving us all kinds of Cancer feels. She has a very public persona, which is the Capricorn polarity. And she's also very unapologetic for being a feminist is what she calls it. And so, but in the end, Mindy got voted out. Missy Elliott beat her out. So Missy Elliott is our first in the final 4 for the Queen of Cancer. And then next we had, well, I'll save that one for last since we're looking at her birth chart today. But then we had Courtney Love go up against Frida Kahlo. And so I know who Courtney Love is, but I didn't know too much about her, but it was really cool to look at her life. And so she's definitely giving us the motherhood aspect. As a punk power couple with Kurt Cobain, they had a daughter together in 1992, and then a year and a half after their daughter's birth, that's when Cobain died. So Courtney has been a single mother, and she is now a symbol of radical feminine power through deep grieving, through recovery, and through her single motherhood. Because often she was portrayed in the media as being overly emotional, of being a druggie, being a bad girl, being an unfit mother. And she's been run through the wash in a lot of ways, but she has still risen above all of that, giving us some of those like Chariot vibes. And her music has like a moody feel to it. And so, and she has a tough outer shell, but also a deep felt emotionality. And so, yeah, but Frida Kahlo beat Courtney Love out. And then this one was interesting. I've had more people reach out to me saying that this is bullshit. But it's just interesting to see how, like, fired up some people get about this Queen of the Zodiac thing. But Meryl Streep went up against Solange Knowles. And, Meryl Streep was, before she was famous, she was homecoming queen and the cheerleading captain in high school. And she's giving us this like very nostalgic nationalism, like American dream feel of the Cancer archetype, like the all-American sweetheart, but she's also, she's known for her versatility, and she plays very Cancerian roles. A lot of the themes of the characters she plays, she does a lot with history, a lot with motherhood, familial relations, death, feminine power, all of that. And so it's definitely a symbol of this Cancer archetype. But Solange Knowles beat her out by 52% of the vote, so it's pretty close. So we have Solange in the final four, Missy Elliott, Frida Kahlo, and then the last person we have is Princess Diana, beat out Malala. And so out of the four that got voted out this week, I thought Malala would be the one to look at this week. And so Malala's birthday is actually tomorrow, July 12th. And so she'll be turning 21 years old. So let's go ahead and honor the life of and look at the birth chart of Malala Yousafzai. So Malala was born on July 12th, 1997, and is a Pakistani activist for female education and is the youngest Nobel Prize winner ever. She's known for her human rights advocacy, especially the education of children, and her advocacy has grown into an international movement. And according to the Pakistani Prime Minister, she's become the most prominent citizen of the country. And so she was born in Mingora, Pakistan, and her family came to run a chain of schools in the region. And so she's been particularly inspired by her father's thoughts and humanitarian work. And so she was born into a family, like an activist family around education. And so that sort of gave me a deeper understanding of like how she can be so badass, but it goes further than that. Her spirit is undeniable. And so in early 2009, at the young age of 11, this was before she was shot. So a lot of people know her. We'll get into that in a moment. But before all of that happened, she wrote a blog under a pseudonym for the BBC, detailing her life during the Taliban occupation. And so the following summer, the New York Times made a documentary about her life as the Pakistani military intervened in the region. And so she was rising in prominence, and she was giving interviews in print and on television. And she was nominated for the International Children's Peace Prize. But then on October 9th, 2012, while on a bus in the Swat district after taking an exam, Malala and two other girls were shot by a Taliban gunman, and it was an assassination attempt in retaliation of her activism. And so the gunman fled the scene. And so Malala was hit in the head with a bullet and remained unconscious and in critical condition. And but her condition later improved enough for her to be transplanted or transferred to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in the UK. And so the attempt of her life sparked an international outpouring of support. And so weeks after the attempted murder, a group of 50 leading Muslim clerics in Pakistan issued what is called a fatwa against those who try to kill her. And so what's a fatwa? I might not even be saying it right, but it's spelled Fatwa. And so I learned that this is basically, it's an unofficial legal statement. It's a non-binding legal opinion that's given out by authority figures. And so the Taliban officials responded to this condemnation and were like pissed. And they were like, you know what? We have plans for a second assassination attempt, because this was considered justified as a religious obligation. And so their statements, again, it resulted in a further international interest in Malala. And so she had this fierce persona already. She was already being an activist for women's and children's education, but it was because of this gun for being shot in the head and surviving this that she got a lot of public attention. And so since, she's become a prominent activist. And so she founded the Malala Fund, which is a nonprofit organization. And in 2013, she co-authored I Am Malala, which is an international bestseller. And she was, in 2012, we said she was a recipient of Pakistan's first National Youth Peace Prize. But then in 2014, she was the co-recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize, making her the youngest ever Nobel Peace Prize winner. In 2015, she was a subject of the Oscar shortlisted documentary, He Named Me Malala. And I found out by looking at some of her interviews and watching some of them, Malala actually means grief-stricken, which really, I mean, that's the symbol of Cancer, is like the holder of grief. And then in 2015, in the 2014 and 15 issues of the Time magazine, she was named one of the most influential people on the globe. And then in 2017, she was awarded honorary Canadian citizenship by our favorite Disney prince, Justin Trudeau. And she became the youngest person to address the House of Commons of Canada. And so she's currently studying for her bachelor's degree in philosophy, politics, and economics in Oxford. And so, yeah, let's break down her birth chart. Because what's going on here? You know, this is amazing. So young. So we'll start with her Cancer Sun energy, of course. So first of all, she's given us the mystical armor of Cancer. Just got to start off with that one. She was shot in the head, straight for her brain. And because of the angle of the bullet, it somehow miraculously ricocheted off of her skull. So that's some sort of crab shell right there. The doctors say that it was a complete miracle that she's still alive. And so there's something really reminiscent of this Cancer crab shell here, of being divinely protected. We see her Cancer energy in the way she carries herself as well. She's very nurturing. And even though she's only 20 years old, she gives off a very motherly energy, a very like grandma intuition energy. She feels much more wise than her age would let off. And she has a very calming presence to her. But then again, on the other side, she gives us this very tough edge to her. She reads kind of to me like there's an emotionless to her, but you can feel her emotion deep down. And I found this with many of the Cancer women we've been studying. There's this like cool and calm and even stoic nature to like these like elevated Cancer queens like Frida Kahlo, Princess Diana, Meryl Streep, Solange Knowles. All of them are like have this calm and collected, and there's something in their gaze too. It's like this soft gaze. It's like they're smizing with their eyes, right? So, yeah, Malala embodies the cool confidence of the crab, and she's risen above life's challenges fiercely pursuing compassion, which Cancer is a cardinal water sign, and cardinal is about initiating. And then water, we can say, is compassion, so initiating compassion. And so as a symbol of the power of compassion and forgiveness, Malala is, to be sure, given a soul-centered Cancer. And she's also activating the polar energy of Cancer, which is Capricorn. And so she takes her nurturing Cancerian ways into the public arena of Capricorn through government, through business, through leadership. And she spends a great deal of time meeting with world leaders and urging them to focus on education. And so her sun is in the 11th house. And so this is Cancer Sun living in an Aquarius world, which shows she is shining a nurturing Cancerian light towards humanity, towards the collective. And then we can look at her moon sign, which is in Libra. And our moon indicates what we may have a deep desire for, or an unconscious pull towards. And Libra and Cancer, first of all, are square to one another as both cardinal signs. So this is a beautiful placement for her and really shows her activism with these two energies initiating together. And so from a soul-centered perspective, we can say that the Libra moon is intuitively guiding her towards bringing justice, peace, and balance to the world, which we definitely know about her. We see that. And it's even amped up because her Mars is in Libra, conjunct to her moon in Libra. And so this now shows she's taking rightful action and using her masculine or her physical energy and vitality, which is Mars, and directing it towards social justice, Libra, in an intuitive way, moon. And even more so, her North Node in Virgo is hanging out with her Mars and moon in Libra. And so her North Node is in Virgo is directing her towards the life of being of service to others. And then her Uranus and Jupiter are in Aquarius. This is indicating she is revolutionary and expansive when it comes to working with the collective. Revolutionary Uranus, expansive Jupiter, collective Aquarius. And these planets are living inside of her 6th house, which is the Virgo house of service to others. And then, yeah, what first took me by surprise when we look at her chart is that she's a Leo rising. I wasn't expecting that. But really, after watching her in interviews, she has a magnetism and a charisma to her, especially on the Ellen DeGeneres show. I was like, whoa, okay, I get it. She has like this warmth, and it's a very sweet Cancer Sun combo with Leo rising energy. She has a sense of humor, and I see her triple tier enacting this incredibly influential activism through Cancer, Libra, Leo. Because she's endearing and relatable. Leo rising is here to wake up to the potential to be in the spotlight, to be an influencer, not by trying to be, but just by simply showing up. It's like the sun. And so, yeah, her Mercury and Venus are both in Leo as well, but they're in the 12th house. So it's showing that she's communicating Mercury, connecting to the feminine, Venus, in a Leo way, but it's also contained in this 12th house energy of releasing karma, of the unknown, of mystery, of spirituality, which shows her potential for dropping mad truth bombs with Mercury being in there that are otherworldly and doing it in a way that is approachable and likable, Leo. And so her triple tier is interesting. The inner Dorothy personal myth making is a moody little girl at a romantic sunset dinner, entertaining us all with her warmth, which I can definitely see. I would want to even like upgrade hers more to being a bit more soul-centered. So the Libra moon would be much more like something about like serving justice, and doing it in a way that is expanding into magnetism. But yeah, I definitely feel that with her. And a quote that I loved from her, which reminded me of the pearl inside the oyster, is she says, "We are starving for education. It's a precious gift. It's like a diamond." And so that image of the diamond being a precious gift is feeling like this Cancer energy. And so happy solar return to Malala. Thank you for the ways that you inspire us to use our life, to use our vessel, to use our body, our chariot, to bring about radical healing and equality to all. And so with that, thank you, Malala. And so we can now transition into the last part of the show, where we're going to sit down with an incredible Cancer Sun, Scorpio Moon, Taurus Rising, Micheal Hooker. And so Micheal Hooker is an art-based psychology writer, performance artist, and is located in Brooklyn, New York, and Tampa, Florida. And so grounded in embodiment practices used in art and therapy, Micheal Hooker's work is influenced by relational participation, an archaic ritual that shapes our language and worldview. And in an attempt to reflect these intersections, she primarily uses the voice and body in live performances, film installations, and both literal and figurative mixed media collages. And her essays have been published by Consequence Magazines, Florist Books, and Artborn Magazine. And so, without further ado, let's get into this convo with Micheal Hooker. I'm so excited and super stoked to introduce everyone to you and your work. So here with us today on the show, we have Micheal Hooker, who is giving us the deep felt emotional waters of the Cancer Crab through your performance art, music, poetry, all of it. And so we're going to get into all of those topics, these very like Cancer high vibes. But first off, welcome to the show, Micheal.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show. I'm honored. As I said before, when you reached out to me, just super honored to be participating in anything that you're offering, because I see your work as very high level spiritual stuff.
Yeah. Well, thank you for saying that. And, we met, I believe, like when I was thinking back to how we met at a yoga class at Greenhouse Holistic back in Williamsburg when Greenhouse was still open.
Yeah. We took a class, the same class, and I noticed your shirt said City Wolf, and I wanted to know what that was about. And then, of course, that you were like, "Oh, I have this dog walking business," and my dog, of course, fell in love with you shortly after, and yeah.
I mean, how nostalgic and Cancer-like for us to be going back into these times. Yeah. I'm very nostalgic for that time of my life. Walking dogs is like a really special part of my life. And also, your dog is one of the most loving dogs I've ever met in the world.
He is so sweet.
Yeah, Aiden. So I think that would be actually a cool place for us to start, because Cancer is all about these like very like compassionate, warm connection with animals. That's something that I associate with Cancer, and just like that energy of like feeling like family. And that's something that dogs for me have always done, is make me feel really safe. And so I know that's not necessarily the case for everyone, but that's my association with them. And so since that's how we met, that would be a cool way for us to start. What's your relationship to your dog?
Well, I've always been a cat person.
Uh-huh.
And my wife, Camille, is 100% dog person. I feel like I live with two puppies. But with Aiden has really taught me how to open up and love and have more joy in my life, like thinking about the crab coming out of my shell and really like bouncing around the room. For instance, I remember one of the first apartments we had in Brooklyn had a flight of stairs. It was 2-story. And I remember moving things around and going upstairs and downstairs, like pretty much all afternoon, kind of getting the space in the apartment just the way I liked it to be. And at one point I turned around and looked down, and I recognized that Aiden had been following me up and down the stairs every single time. And I just looked at him in the eyes, and he gives really good eye contact. We spend a lot of time with like the animal gaze connection. And I looked down at him, and suddenly I understood my wife and this kind of Labrador doggy love in a totally new way, because she's always had a lab her whole adult life. And it just like opened up my heart a little bit for understanding her expectations of love. Whereas meanwhile, I have at that time, a cat was in the same apartment, and who knows where she was at the time of this epiphany, because we were just chill. We were like, hey, I love you. You're across the room. I'll see you later when I have food for you. So yeah, Aiden is definitely has become a center of joy and heart opening in my life, for sure.
Yeah. I actually think that I connect Cancer more with cats than I do with dogs, because there is a way, like, the cat often will like have their sense of space in their home, and also they also like their own space too. And the connection to intuition as well, which Cancer is also connected to the moon too. So definitely cat vibes with Cancer. And then I think dogs would be maybe a little bit more like Leo or something.
Yeah. I mean, cats, or at least my cats, are reserved in giving their love. But once they do, you're in.
Is that something you associate with Cancer?
Yeah. And myself, for sure. Like, I just read something the other day online. It was like a quote by an anonymous person about how they don't give up on friends easily, but when they do, the friend did it first, basically. Like, and that's how I feel. Like, I'm very loyal to my friends, and very like, it's a part of like my secure attachment to have created a urban family where my biological family wasn't super secure and consistent. And so when I have friends, I have them for, as long as possible. But once I realize that they have let go and disregarded the loyalty and the love potential, then I'm like, okay, no, heart needs to be protected.
Yeah. Soul family.
Yeah.
And so you have a wife too. What's her sign?
She's a Virgo.
Okay.
She's like, I think she's a triple Virgo.
Boom. Nice.
Yeah, but I think she's. But if I'm not mistaken, I feel as though her moon might actually be in Libra. We go back and forth about this. I haven't looked at her chart in a while. But she's very, but what's funny is that she's very Virgo in the ways of, discipline and success driven, and also not necessarily being what you see completely, she represents in a certain way. And then once you get to know her, she's got like these really interesting layers. I mean, I guess that's true with all humans.
Right.
But the sort of sharp sophistication of her sun sign and her visual presence, I guess, kind of fades away once you get to know her, and then she's a Labrador.
Yeah, interesting. What is a Cancer Virgo relationship like?
Okay, so I can give you our version of the Cancer Virgo relationship is, so say we have moved into a new apartment and we have art that we want to hang on the wall. I look at the wall and know where I want the piece of art to hang exactly. Like I just eyeball it. It's my intuition. It's my felt sense. She needs to have the measuring tape. It will. She has a little pencil to measure everything out, and it will take an hour and a half to do what I would just be like, put the nail there.
Yeah.
But the good thing is that we've both come to the same point of where the nail needs to be. We just have different ways of getting to the same place.
So it seems pretty balancing.
Yeah. And we both, like, what she gets stressed out about, I don't get stressed out about, and vice versa. So we're able to be really supportive to one another when we see that the other is in need of support. Which I've actually dated a Cancer.
Oh, wow.
Oh my gosh. That should not happen. That's well, I mean, I'll take that back. I learned a lot about loving and about myself, and it was a really great relationship in that we were very creative people and we had a lot of fun together. But then the other side of it is almost otherworldly and creative and fun as our relationship was. The shadow side was that it matched in its tumultuous nature as well.
Yeah.
So not balancing.
Yeah. Well, I hope this is okay for me to say, but when I had the pleasure of pup sitting Aiden, I also had the opportunity to stay in your home too, which is cool. I had like this insight into like a Cancer world, or like a Cancer Virgo world. And so I think like your apartment was beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
I think the bookshelf sticks out in my mind.
Yeah.
What is your relationship to home?
So the books are home for both Camille and I. And as a Cancer and also as an only child, books were the place that I could go and have friends, and siblings, So I read a lot as a kid, and so did my biological mother. And so she modeled that, and that was a really great gift to receive from her. And so the books, even in our house in Florida, are a mainstay of home for us.
Is there one book that comes to mind that really gives you the home feelings?
Yeah. Okay. So it's a book of poetry by Jack Gilbert called The Great Fires.
What about that gives you the home feels?
Well, he has one poem that I came into contemplation with in 2007 called The Forgotten Dialect of the Heart. And yeah.
Wow.
And then in the line, there's a line towards the end of it where he writes, "My love is 100 pitchers of honey." And I got chills again right now just saying it.
And I've heard you say this line before, and this could be a good segue into us talking a bit about your performance art and your connection to bees.
Sure, yeah. So in 2007, I read this poem, and this one line stuck with me so much that I first started talking to people about it. Like, what does this line feel like to you? And because for me, I had such a visceral response to it. It felt suffocating. It felt like too much honey, too much love, And I would ask other people, and some people would be like, "Oh, that's so sweet." And other people would be like, "Oh, that's so romantic and sensual." and then other people like me at the time would have the same feeling of suffocation. So through time, I asked friends I wanted to feel the concrete meaning of what this poet potentially meant by the line. And the only way I could come up with was to ask my friends and family to send me jars of honey. And I didn't really know what I was going to do with them at first, but I knew I needed to make something of this question mark in my heart around the sentence. And eventually I collected, after a year and a half, enough honey to do a bathing ritual, which was pretty phenomenal to experience.
There's a video online.
Yeah.
If anyone's listening and this is really speaking to you, you can check it out. Yeah. Where could we find that?
I think on my website.
Yes, so I'll leave a link in the show notes.
Yeah.
But you're in a bathtub covering yourself in honey, and there's, to me, what sounded like a violin, I'm not really sure, playing in the background. Oh,
that was just strange production that I did on the computer. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of a drone.
Mm.
It was a drone and a couple layers, because I wanted to create something that had, for me, a felt like sense of earthy bee potential, and their way of buzz humming and communicating with one another. So in the process of collecting these jars for a year and a half, I was researching about the myths and rituals of bees and their honey, and came to understand about colony collapse disorder, which is a fatal epidemic that it's kind of phenomenal, the way that the bees, actually very loyal, fastidious creatures, will abandon their home and die. And there are a number of different reasons or causes for colony collapse disorder. But actually, on my website, or where you can find the video, there's more conversation about the relationship between bees, colony collapse disorder, and also human trauma, and our relationship with nature and trauma in general. So yeah, I bathed in the honey, and a great friend of mine, through actually the experience of her videoing it, we became great friends, and have been ever since. She filmed it, and it felt as though I had recreated the womb experience and rebirthed myself.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like I was reborn out of the love of my friends and family.
Oh my gosh, so many Cancer themes going on. First of all, you said, when you asked people, they said that some people said 100 pictures of honey was like sweet, which I associate that word with Cancer. Also, romantic. And then this idea of suffocating, too. And like, also feels Cancer in ways. And the connection to loyalty, which you had mentioned already, like in the beginning, that's a quality of you as a Cancer. But I think what's really coming to me right now is like bees, like our symbol of the matriarchy, which Cancer is as well. And I mean, my goddess, what better symbol to represent the great mother than the queen bee?
Right.
So there's something about the beehive too that feels reminiscent of home, and the nectar and honey giving us the sweetness of Cancer, but also the sharp sting and like tough exterior of even the hive, and also of the bee, like giving us that like Cancer claw and shell. And so I don't know, have you ever, like, you've worked with bees a lot, have you made that connection to Cancer?
This conversation is really important for me as a Cancer who has not always been able to embrace the identity of Cancer. So I haven't made the connection of the bees with Cancer in the past, because I've resisted the identity of Cancer for most of my life.
You're not the only Cancer to say that.
Really?
Yeah, I think I'm not saying that that's Cancer, but I think that the archetype can bring up a lot of resistance for people. Even the word Cancer can bring up a lot too. So I don't know, where do you think that resistance is coming from?
So my knee-jerk response would be, once I started reading, like once I was able to understand, oh, there's a zodiac that I could refer to understand a wider sense of the world I'm living in. Anything I would read about Cancer, it came across as sort of pathetic and like a doormat. And I didn't want to identify with any of the things that I was reading about. So I would often look at, okay, my moon is in Scorpio. What's that look like? I'm on the cusp of Gemini. What's that look like? My rising's Taurus, you know? And, but even that word pathetic that I just used, I've looked up the etymology of the word, and it goes back to piety. And I think that there's something in the culture that I participate in as an American that doesn't see the pious life as valuable. And so now our use of the word pathetic is to say something isn't, you know, worth regarding.
It seems like we're rewriting our relationship to this Cancerian energy.
Yeah.
And you're helping to upgrade that vocabulary. And so the soul center perspective is putting Cancer in a sense of like power with their intuition. And so, and I feel that from you.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Well, my archetype in the tarot is the number 2. So that's the high priestess. And intuition, and I think one of the big things for the high priestess as a life goal is to recognize and honor and really trust their intuition. And I think that kind of, for me, coincides with starting to really trust and recognize the connection of intuition with Cancer identity as well. And as I've gotten older, I have started to, I'm slowly starting to recognize that my intuition is such a power that when I don't honor it, I'm not able to live in my authentic path. When you posted that post about Cyndi Lauper, and you mentioned earlier that we might talk about it, so I took some time to really sit with the meaning of seeing that post for me. It really opened up, it really clicked a new level of this self-acceptance, this Cancer self-acceptance for me. Because of course Cyndi Lauper is an activist, and of course she would have come across that chauvinistic song and worked to get the rights for it and rewrite it and perform it the way that she did. Of course she's a Cancer.
Right? Yeah.
And of course she's a Scorpio moon.
Which is you too. Which is,
yeah.
this, for those listening, this is why we're talking about Cyndi Lauper, because Micheal and Cyndi have the same triple tier, which is Cancer Sun, Scorpio Moon, Taurus Rising.
Yeah. And I think you said that her rising was Capricorn, though.
Oh, is she?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what your post said. But meanwhile, it's still an Earth sign.
It's still an Earth sign, but there's still that connection, though, with the sun and the moon, which is...
Yeah, big. And it made me think... So I suddenly see, and, you know, again, I'm mentioning being an American, which is a complicated identity. Being a person who recognizes how popular culture does affect the psyche. And then seeing the image of Cyndi Lauper and recognizing the ways in which she and I resonate in our soul chart, our astrological chart, it liberated a little piece of me to self-accept as that part of my identity. And it also led me to that, you know, back in the 80s, there was the whole Madonna versus Cyndi Lauper thing. Right. Of like who's going to be, there's only room for one on the throne. And of course Madonna is a Leo.
Right.
And her approach to music and her approach to her career is totally different than the Cancer Scorpio Moon Cyndi Lauper. And that's totally okay. Like there's room for both.
Absolutely. And I just looked, she's an Aquarius rising, that's right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so been doing this, creating dialogue around this the last few weeks, but when I looked at Judy Garland's birth chart, I realized that the character she was playing matched her sun, moon, rising. And so I created a Finding Your Inner Dorothy personal myth making. And so your triple tier with the Cancer, Scorpio, Taurus is a moody little girl, which is Cancer Sun, in the shadowy darkness of night, Scorpio Moon, which is giving us, like, it's taking us even deeper there. And then Taurus rising, which is coming into her feminine power. So that's your inner Dorothy. Does that bring up anything for you?
So it's so funny. The shadowy darkness of night, the aspect of Scorpio moon for me is such a big deal because it feels like the part of me that is so prominent that no one can ever see. I don't think anyone can see that. Mm-hmm. So going back to like why resistance with Cancer, I feel like I represent maybe as Cancer to a lot of people. And my Scorpio moon is so important to me that I perpetually feel unknown.
You have a song that I felt like really embodied your Scorpio moon, which was, I think it's called Obsidian.
Oh, yeah.
I wrote down some lyrics from this song.
Okay.
When your totem animal is a pelican, sacrifice is all you'll know. Obsidian, tricky, tricky, dark crystal under New Mexico. What was going on here?
The pelican, I don't know, there's an imagery in the archetype of the pelican or the myth of the pelican where the pelican actually pecks and eats into its own chest. And to sacrifice for really the world alchemically. And so that's what the pelican represents. And also the pelican is on a totem in St. Petersburg, Florida, where I spent pretty much all of my early and mid-20s. So at the time of writing that song, I was looking back on time spent in St. Petersburg, Florida, and also during that time taking a road trip to New Mexico where the obsidian rock is heavily present. And that's a rock, like people will move to New Mexico, to Albuquerque specifically, and where the obsidian rock is prominent. People will move there and it's like that stone will stir your stuff and spit you out if you're not supposed to be there. And so that's, how the stone of obsidian speaks to me of like, watch out. You want to stir your stuff so you can deal with it, or you want to avoid it?
Very Scorpio, going down into the subconscious and stirring stuff up, transformation too. So let's go ahead and tune into that now.
When you're told a man ocean, pity embrace. No one is watching you like you. Obsidian. When you told him that mom is a pelican, sacrifice is all you know. Obsidian, tricky, tricky, dark crystal under New Mexico. The fight beyond the mind, oh you won't let go. A hush falls over the crowd, and no one still sees. Our thoughts have gotten so loud. Obsidian, obsidian.
So this Scorpio moon energy, but also I still want to get into this Cancer Sun too, and how powerful these two energies are working together. But something that really spoke to me of your Cancerian connection to intuition, and also Scorpio being there too. I remember one time when I was pup sitting for you that you left to go on, I think it was like a Carl Jung like dream immersive, like in the woods of Vermont. Did I butcher that?
No, perfect. Yeah. So the last few years I've been doing Jungian dream retreats in training to offer these kind of retreats with a Jungian. He's a magician too. He's a magician who is a Jungian inspired psychotherapist that lives in the mountains of Vermont. He's such an incredible person, man. You should see his chart. I think it's all air, 100%
Wow.
air.
What's his name?
His name is Tom Werner.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll send you a link to his nonprofit that I've done some fundraising for called Magicians Without Borders.
Wow.
Where oh my God, it's so dope. It's so dope. So yeah, you are absolutely correct. It might have been the first time that I had taken the retreat, actually, because I do it every year, and that was a few years ago.
Let's start with, what is Jungian dream? Who is Carl Jung, for those who might not even know?
So yeah, Carl Jung is he's a psychologist who developed psychoanalytic psychology and analysis. So Jungian analysis is a common phrase. He was a real interesting card. And he developed a form of psychotherapy that was really based on depth, going into the depths of the psyche. So let me I feel like that was a little bit of a clumsy explanation of who Carl Jung is. So
I was feeling it.
Okay. I felt like, I think I got too excited. And he was a Swiss psychiatrist, basically, and a psychoanalyst. And he worked with Freud. Freud was his mentor for some time. And they had a breaking point around a few different topics. One of the stories is that Freud would not share his dreams completely and not allow Carl Jung to hear his dreams. And Carl Jung took that as a hierarchical concept of doing depth work, where you could really just be on potentially the same level with your therapist and client relationship. So he branched out and developed depth psychology, and part of depth psychology has to do with looking at the dream life, treating the psyche with the regard of the archetypes that come up in the dream life, and what archetypes are speaking to you, and how you can understand what the inner workings of the psyche is trying to tell you that your waking life being can't hear.
What is your connection to this psychology practice, besides the fact that you're a Cancer Scorpio?
That's it. That's all. Again, being an only child and like growing up as an adult, I was always looking for ways to understand my own identity and the world around me better. So I came across Carl Jung's books on dreams probably when I was 19, around my moon node, actually, 18 or 19. And it just resonated with me because a lot of it, there's also talk of intuition and the different strengths of the psyche. And I think that was probably the beginning of me recognizing that intuition was something to begin with, that intuition existed and that it was something of a strength of mine. And I also just feel like doing personal work and sharing personal work with others is a great way to have a deep connection with self and other. I don't do small talk very well. I feel like I'm awkward when I try to have small talk. And so doing like workshops where everybody's getting together to get into the depths of, existential questions, makes me feel like I have family and I'm connected to, I don't know, something more purposeful.
Yeah, you say on your bio that you're an arts-based psychology writer. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so my undergraduate degree is in psychology, but I use that program specifically to look at different forms of art and look at art as a means for opening up psyche and connecting to psyche. Also through performance specifically, because it's such an embodied way of showing and sharing art, and being in the body, being closer and more connected to the body can be a really useful tool when dealing with gradations of depression, trauma, etc. So my interest is, how do we get more art accessible to a larger audience? So public art and social practice is a big passion of mine. And I'm actually enrolling this fall in a master's program at NYU in art and public policy, so I can kind of chase that dream further and take my psychology background and look at the art world and see how it resonates from the art world specifically.
Well, not only that, you're also a curator and an owner of what is the Lecter Social Club.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Which is a literary natural wine bar in Tampa, Florida. Yeah.
So it's actually a shop, which is a confusing part of our branding, is that we are originally going to be a bar. But what we are is a literary-based natural wine shop with a lending library that boasts over 800 books that were actually donated by a local writer. And he is a really lovely person that I've collaborated with on a couple other projects. And we have a little stage that we support local and national writers to come and read on the stage, or local musicians to come and perform. Yeah, and that's in Tampa.
Beautiful. What inspired you to open this?
Well, the Lector actually is a part of the Tampa history. Back in the 1800s, there were all of these cigar factories where workers from all over the world, all these different immigrants, would come and quietly roll cigars in the factories. And the workers themselves would hire the lector, the reader, to read to them. And they would read news from home. They would inform this population of what was happening in their homeland. But they would also read poetry and literature. And so the lector is a very Tampa centric myth. I mean, well, it's not a myth. It's a reality. It's a part of Tampa's history. But
it's become like, it feels like mythological now in a way.
Sure, yeah, because there aren't very many people who do keep this memory, this history alive.
I'm getting the chills because Cancer is also connecting us to the past and is honoring roots and history and all of that. Which this is you're doing that through this.
That's so cool. Thank you for helping me with this little barrier of entry in the identity of Cancer. I wanted to honor the history of Tampa while it's having this really amazing renaissance currently. And there's a lot of great development that's happening. And with new development, I think it's really important to honor the past and to see what the city did right and to not pave the way thinking that you're doing something new. And new doesn't always mean better. And so our name comes from Tampa's history of the lector. And another aspect of this concept is to remember that Tampa historically created a bridge between philosophers, artists from other countries to our country, and then also back to New York. So since I live both in New York and Tampa, I just saw this opportunity to remember and reify that bridge. So we've had artists come from New York and perform here, and as a part of a residency program that's affiliated with Lector as well. So it's one way for me to take all these seemingly divergent interests of mine and connect them.
You know, I never told you this before, but whenever I would pup sit at your place, there was something about your home that made me want to sing.
Oh.
Yeah, and maybe it was the high ceilings in that space. I like the sound quality in the bathroom. But I actually wrote a few songs that are near and dear to my heart while pet sitting, like in your home. And looking back on it, I feel like I was picking up on your creative energy. But what is your relationship to music and singing?
Well, first I just have to tell you how meaningful it is to hear that song was happening in the space in my absence, and song from you, no doubt. Like, it just it's so great. And the high ceilings, definitely the acoustics were really fun in that apartment. So singing for me has been a way of physically relaxing my nervous system. It was an intuition of mine. I had no idea about like polyvagal music theory and understanding the way that like singing from the belly helps relax the nervous system and helps soothe certain experiences of trauma. So by instinct, I sang a lot when I was a little girl in a very like stressful, violent household. And then in my early 20s, started performing in public slowly. And so it's really a therapy for me, and it always has been. But it's also a way for me I always felt like I was a poet that sings, it enabled me to share the poetry I would write and not feel alone in writing poetry, because writing, I love writing, and it is a very solitary practice. And there's a phenomenal thing that happens when you share what you write with others who actually read it and digest it. And that's kind of where in the last few years I've been sitting, is not singing and performing in public, but really trying to hone my craft as a writer. But my body needs to sing, because it's not about being on a stage. It's about connecting and resonating with sound.
Yeah, so it's this connection to the words, but also the soothing of the nervous system too.
Yeah.
Which is the singing allows for. And yeah, your lyrics are very poetic. And so this next song I'd like to listen to is The Serpent and the Bird. And so I want to read a stanza, some lyrics from this, and then we can create some dialogue around it. I picked out this particular part because it felt Cancerian and Scorpion to me. Life is so much easier once we're dead and gone. Bury me in my backyard, say goodbye with song. The serpent lies beneath the earth, bird flies hide home. See them touch will burn our eyes. Lose all self-control, then where do we go? Yeah, what inspired this song?
So the Red Book, coming back to Carl Jung, I actually wrote this piece sitting in the Sarasota Jung Society library, where they had a copy of the Red Book, which is a book, Sanu Shamdasani, translated Carl Jung's effectively process of sort of losing his mind and finding his soul and creating mandalas and talking through archetypes. And it's a really powerful book. I now have my own copy, which I'm very honored to have. Friends, my adopted mother and my dear, dear, dear friend gifted it to me some years back. And so the serpent is a theme throughout the book where Carl Jung is speaking to his own self and psyche. And that really resonated with me because there's this idea of the serpent being this bad thing, the biblical concept of what happened in the Garden of Eden. And but then if we look at the idea of the Kundalini energy lying deep in the body and sleeping and resting until we become more awake and conscious, that I think for me really balances out the negative concepts of the serpent. Yeah, I think that the line of life being easier once we're gone has to do with this idea that death is something that we can't, or I feel like in our society, which I participate in, there's a lot of taboo around death and fear around death. And I do believe that there's a movement afoot to recognize and wake up to the reality that we're dying every day. The cells in our body are dying every day. And if we can become more awake to the reality of our death, we can live life more fully. But not everybody's going to do that. And sometimes there's this idea of peace occurring once we're dead. Then there's that line that people say, "Oh, I'll sleep when I'm dead."
Right.
Like there's this race of living to an end.
Yeah, I think that's a great introduction to this song.
Okay.
Why don't we go ahead and listen to it now?
Cool.
Shattered every solid word.
there was something that came to mind about the piercing of the lungs.
Yeah. That's in Serpent and the Bird as well.
Mm-hmm.
Winter's come and gone, and the light in the furnace is still on. So there's some sense of not taking care of the home. like why would you keep the furnace on if it's not hot? Like it's not winter anymore. Like you haven't even paid attention to the seasons that's passed, and then the scene will pierce your lung. Like once you wake up to what you haven't acknowledged, or that shadow side, it can be piercing. And that's, I think, why people don't look.
Yeah, the connection to the lung. Cancer is this part of the body. It's the lungs,
Yeah.
It's the breast, it's the rib cage. What is your connection to this part of your body?
Well, gosh, I mean, just with singing, you've got like the lower diaphragm to connect through, the lung capacity to be able to carry the notes as far as they want to be carried through. And then also, my understanding, sometimes for some people, grief can represent in the lung space, and the nostalgia of the cancer can connect with grief as well. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think for myself, I'm aware of the ways that in which I sigh when I'm feeling grief or a heaviness in my nostalgia.
Yeah, something with death too that came to me when you were talking is the 3 water signs. All 3 of them rule over death, but there's different connections that they rule over. So Cancer rules over the death of ancestors and family members.
Oh.
Scorpio rules over the death of a lover, like sexual lover. And then Pisces rules over the death of the self, or the ego. So does that bring up anything for you? I'm just curious.
Yeah. So Cancer and the death of ancestors. Well, what it brings up to me, and I wish I had the book handy. There's a book on ancestral karma that I read maybe last year, and it's all about recognizing how our ancestors can set us up for some karmic experiences in the current, and the ways in which we can unravel some of that. Relating to not, for me personally, what also comes up is just not knowing who my ancestors are, not being sure who my mother's father was, taking a DNA test in order to even get a sense of what was going on.
Right.
So, and just like sort of the sense of longing for a clear identity with my ancestors, since they are by name dead and gone.
Mm-hmm. Well, I asked you to pick who your Queen of Cancer is and why. Yeah.
Solange Knowles. She's amazing, period, right? But then just recently she donated just this beautiful act of generosity to the Project Row houses, which is an art and public action initiative in Houston, Texas. And as a result of her gift, they were able to meet their fundraising goal, and are now going to be able to send 12 of their Third Ward students to the Smithsonian Museum. It's the National Museum of African American History and Culture. So that just seems like, for me, she just kind of went to the top of the list.
Wow. I actually didn't know that about her, so thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
So we did this little fun game on the show called Cosmic Slip and Slide.
Okay.
Are you familiar?
No, I don't think I've put that part of the
Yeah. It's always towards the end. So,
okay.
And it's a 60-second little... This is like fulfilling my childhood dream of becoming a game show host, I think. But I put 60 seconds on the clock, and then I ask you as many questions as you can answer in 60 seconds about Cancer. And so, but it's more about your personal relationship to this energy. It's not like right or wrong answers.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Yeah. All right, you ready?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so 60 seconds on the clock.
Okay.
And we'll start now. If Cancer were a wine, which wine would Cancer be?
Ooh, Jura. Anything from the Jura region.
What is Cancer's biggest pet peeve?
Not having enough personal space. Close talkers.
What texture reminds you of Cancer?
Lace.
Favorite quality of a Cancer?
Big heart.
If Cancer were a title to a poem?
Oh.
It's a hard one.
The Forgotten Dialect of the Heart.
What famous psychologist feels most Cancer?
Maybe Carl Jung.
What genre of movie is most likely Cancer?
Oh, gosh. Dark comedy.
Which flower do you associate with Cancer?
Rose.
Okay, we're right at time.
Great.
So let's talk a little bit about some of them. I'm, of course, drawn to the wine and why you chose this wine.
Well, in the Jura region of France, they have a tendency to make these really oxidative white wines. So they have a lot of skin contact, and oxidation makes for, the visual of an oxidated wine is that of an older wine. So there's this nostalgia for the time passed in the bottle as oxygen has affected this new wine.
And if you're in Tampa, can you pick one up at your shop?
Oh, yeah, totally. We have a ton of really fun and funky wines, too.
Well, I hope someday I can come and visit you there.
Yeah, you've got family in Florida, so.
Oh, thank you so much for saying that.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for being on the show today. It was such an honor to create dialogue around this archetype, and I feel like I know that I have a deeper understanding of this Cancerian energy from just knowing you and seeing your work in the world.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's such a great experience. So.
Yeah, thank you. All right, Cancer Crabbies, Cosmic Cousins, thank you so much again for being here this week. And let's pick out our Queen of Cancer this week. And so vote on the Instagram, cosmic.cousins. If you'd like to book a reading, that's available at astrologycousins.com. And I'll see you next week for our season finale of season 3. Can you believe it? So I'm sending you all love. Take gentle, sweet care over this eclipse season. Remember deep breaths, and I'll see you soon.
La 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 la.